2011, Best of Show, Storage Magazine Gold in 2012. We got Storage Magazine Silver in 2013, and we are continuing to add to those awards. And then the last housekeeping item is, if you look on the panel that popped up for me on the right-hand side of my screen, there is a questions tab. So in there, you can type in your questions that you'd like to ask us. Okay, so the agenda for today is I'm going to introduce Sam in just a couple of minutes, and he's going to talk about his business, give an overview of the environment, the challenges he saw with BCDR, the purchasing process, and then ultimately why he selected Zerto. And then I'll take over from there and give you an overview of Zerto Virtual Replication and tell you how you can learn more. So as I mentioned, Sam is a database administrator at Commercial Foodservice Repair. He has 20 years of IT experience, including a bachelor's of science in computer science. He has experience with application development and web design. And his current key responsibilities include disaster recovery for an operation that runs 24 hours a day on various custom applications, but a lot of Microsoft applications, so SQL, Exchange, SharePoint, Link, etc. And he also has responsibilities for managing Microsoft SQL Server, and he's responsible for all performance and support of the web portal for all business operations. So Sam is very busy. So Sam, at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. My apologies if the phone breaks up or I disconnect up front. I'm currently in Texas, and we are currently playing with our internet trying to get another server stack up. So if it sounds scratchy, let me know, and I'll try and reconnect. But I work for Commercial Foodservice Repair. What we do, most people don't hear, have never heard our name before, but pretty much our technicians go out and service, maintain, repair, install any type of food and beverage equipment in all kinds of stores. That can range from Barnes & Noble to 7-Eleven to movie theaters, pretty much anything that has like a Coke machine, Slurpee machine, hot dog rollers, freezers, anything. And we do that 24 hours a day. That's pretty much the gist of our business, really. Let me go to the next slide. We run a 99% virtualized environment. We have 3 server stacks. We've got 2 in our Greenville corporate headquarters, and I just got finished moving one here to Texas, and that's going to be our off-site disaster recovery, which we will be linking Zerto up to today. And we've got a 50 MIP E-line through TW Telecom that connects those 2 sites, Greenville and Texas, and we run BGP on both those so we can fail over in the case that Greenville goes out. We can bring everything back up in Texas, and everybody can still be running their service calls with no issue. Currently, we're protecting 22 VMs. We can go up to 30, but right now we're just doing 22. We run everything on that from SQL Server VMs. We're a Microsoft Dynamics. We do Great Plains, Exchange. We run Microsoft Link for chatting between employees at various offices throughout the country. We do SharePoint. Most used is the report center, so our employees can get various reports and metrics on things. But we also custom roll a lot of applications. We run trackers, which tracks the location of our vans, web portal for our techs so they can run their service calls. So we do a good bit of stuff. Storage-wise, we've got 2 Dell EqualLogic units. We've got Dell PowerVault MDs and HP NSA 2000s and NSA 70s. And all total, we've probably got anywhere from 60 to 100 terabytes of storage, and we're currently probably have about 22 to 30 terabytes in production. We run Dell PowerEdge servers, and the HP server is the one that we just moved to Texas, and they're pretty similar as far as performance with CPU, RAM, and storage between them. Go to the next slide. our CEO is pretty, tech savvy, or, he likes to play with things. And so, he knows most of what's out there. So he knows that, if you throw enough money at stuff and have enough time, you can do about anything. And he wanted zero downtime. So, with Veeam, we like Veeam. It's not a bad product. We still use it, every day, mostly twice a day. And, we offshore a lot of that stuff just in case everything blows up between here and Texas. We'll be able to bring it up somewhere because we do offload a lot of stuff to cloud storage with Veeam. So we're not knocking Veeam. It just wasn't fast enough for us. And we were really looking for something that, could replicate in real time because we do a lot of transactions per day, per hour, per minute. And we really didn't want to lose any of that stuff because it's really mucky to try and, find a good point in time to roll back through transaction logs and whatnot with SQL Server. It can be done, but it's just not as easy as it is with Zerto. And, with the zero downtime, Zerto really helps. Typically, we see an RPO anywhere from 3 seconds and at the most up to about 7 or 8 seconds, and that's when we're really getting hammered hard with some transactions on like our Exchange and SQL Server box. Next slide. I already spoke a little bit about Veeam, so I guess I kind of cut ahead a little bit on the slide there. The RPO just wasn't as fast. And, with some of our customers, we have SLAs with our customers, and some of those SLAs are, an hour or two, response time for us. So if we were down, with Veeam, we may not be able to get up in time to, get some of those emails for some of the service calls, and we, might be missing, business and money, and, it's never a good thing. And with Zerto, we're able to do that because, the RPO is so low, and the failover time with our main critical boxes, I can have, our main 8 critical boxes that will allow us to run service calls in less than 10 minutes, which is pretty awesome. And it's, as the slide says, it really is kind of a one-button kind of push thing. You set up your network settings and, a few other settings ahead of time, and as long as you have those correct, you just push the failover button and select a couple options depending on how you have things set up, and it does everything for you. You just sit back and watch everything come back to life and feel a lot better knowing that you don't have to do a whole lot to make a whole lot of people above your pay grade happy. When it came to installation, it is pretty straightforward and simple. You run the install for the main ZVM, the Zerto Virtual Appliance, and that has to sit on its own little VM. And once you install that, you can go back and install the VRAs, which you need a VRA per host. So in our case, we run 1 controller and 5 hosts. We run VMware, vSphere, vCenter, and each stack has the same amount of hosts, same controller. So we run 5 VRAs, and those are linked to each host. And then once you have that up and running, you can go back and set your virtual protection groups or VPGs. And the way we run it is, we kind of tier them, and we don't like to put more than 2 or 3 at a time, but that's just a personal preference really on our part, and that's just so we can kind of splinter them off a little better. We'll bring up a domain controller first, and then we'll bring up a SQL box before we'll bring up like an Exchange box or before a web portal. So nothing's up and trying to find data that it can't find, and that's pretty nice to be able to set the boot order for those VMs within those virtual protection groups. But it's super easy to set up, and I don't think there's anything too hard about setting it up. I'd say I've had a few questions here or there, but the support has always been good, and they're more than happy to answer any questions you have. Next slide. When it comes to configurations, I personally really didn't have to do anything special. to get Zerto to work with, SQL or Exchange or anything else. It just works, which is kind of nice. And like the spot says, I mean, it really is kind of a set it and forget it, infomercial kind of thing. I mean, once you get it going, it just runs. I have it up on one of my monitors, and I watch it all day long, and it just keeps running. It's pretty nice. And one thing, and I think I've told Jennifer this before, that Zerto doesn't really advertise that, it's good for maintenance, but, from our perspective, it's one of the best tools for maintenance, in my opinion, because, we have two stacks currently in Greenville, and they're both Dell stacks. And if we need to run maintenance, we can just fail over that entire stack and to the other stack, and then, our production never goes down. And then we can shut down the other stack, change out whatever we need to change out, if like maybe a stick of RAM's bad, just change it out, or if we need to change out, say, a whole storage array, we can do that. So it's kind of nice being able to do that in the middle of the day, without production going down, and we don't have to sit there, on the weekends or Friday night at 12 or 1 in the morning hoping that we don't get calls while we do this maintenance. So it's, it's a good feeling knowing that we can pretty much, do whatever we want with any of our stacks at any time. It's kind of nice. Next slide. Like I mentioned before, the service levels are really good with Zerto. I mean, I honestly have no complaints, and it would be really hard to try and get it, any better than it is. Not that it, everything always gets better, hopefully, in the future, but, from our standpoint, it does very, very well. 3 seconds on the RTO is at the max, 7 or 8, and that's when we're getting hit really hard. And like I mentioned before, the RTO is, max 10 minutes on our criticals, and that gets us back up running the business, running calls, techs doing their thing, accepting emails and service calls and whatnot. As I just mentioned, it, definitely simplifies the maintenance strategy. Pretty much we can do it anytime we want. I mean, unless our whole building is down and Texas is down, I mean, we're pretty set right now as far as being able to play with whatever equipment we wanted anytime, which is something we didn't have before. And it definitely makes things easier. I know I definitely sleep a lot better at night because of that. As far as recovery from natural disasters and stuff like that, the first day we moved into our new building in Greenville, the nice electricians that they were, decided that they'd want to put a 20-amp breaker on a 30-amp line, and our entire production stack went down the very first day, and that was after TW Telecom. We were down for 6 hours because they decided that they wanted to give us one IP instead of a block of 32, which that didn't go over real well either. And then that breaker popped right after we got back online. But, we had Zerto, and like I said, I think it was 8 minutes that we had all the criticals back up, which is pretty awesome. And after the day we had there, I mean, that was kind of like the icing on the cake, really, for that to go out. But it was a great opportunity to see Zerto work in a real situation, because before that, I mean, we had just, failed over from office to office, and that's really the only time we'd, done a real failover before, which that worked really well too. We moved offices, and we moved one stack down to our new office, had the old stack at our old office, had TW put a WAN circuit between the two offices, and we failed over all our VM boxes, and none of our employees knew any difference at all. I mean, they couldn't even tell that anything had went down. And then we shut down the stack at our old office, moved it to our new office, paired it back up, and nobody knew anything. They just thought some magic had happened or something. So that's really nice. And, being able to replicate and, protect all our applications, across the board that are business critical is pretty nice. I've said this already, but I say it to my boss all the time. With Zerto, I definitely sleep better at night. If we didn't have it, I would probably be a little bit more worried than I am on a daily basis. But with Zerto, it's definitely nice to have it. It's kind of like that ace of spades in your back pocket. Next slide. I guess that's it for me then. Take back over.
Thank you, Sam. Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you want to keep going? I'll keep going, I mean.
No, I think I'm good. I don't know how much better I can make Zerto sound. It's a great product. It's easy to use, easy to set up. It definitely makes life a lot better when you have it installed. And we've looked, and we honestly haven't found anything else that works better.
Great. So you can see why I want you to hear from our customers, because one, Sam has several interesting experiences, but I think they are kind of relevant, one in terms of the maintenance, and two, when someone comes in and puts that breaker on the line that's just not in line with the actual current. So it can make a big difference to hear from those real live customer experiences. So I'm going to take us through the product. Oops, wrong way. There we go. So Zerto Virtual Replication is a virtual aware product. What do I mean by that? It replicates VMs and VMDKs. It doesn't replicate LUNs or things like that. So for example, we have customers who were replicating at the LUN level, and they were over-replicating, because you're replicating the full size of that LUN, whether it's 50 gigs or 100 gigs or whatever it is, and you might only be using 80% of that, or maybe even 40% of that. So with a virtual aware solution, you replicate with what you're interested in, the VMs and the VMDKs. Software only installs seamlessly into your existing environment. So you heard Sam mention in particular for best practices, he didn't really have to do anything special to his carefully configured applications to get Zerto to work effectively with it. So we know how much time you've invested into configuring those applications so that they work exactly as your business requires. And for BCDR, we will not make you change any of that. It also scales really nicely, and you'll see that in the architecture slide. And then enterprise class, so you heard Sam talk about his RPOs in the 3 to 8 second range, and then his RTOs, 8 to 10 minute range. So we want to make sure that your critical applications are up and running quickly. And then how we get those very aggressive service levels, particularly the RTO, is through completely automated replication and recovery. So, talking to Sam, he talks about, it's a push button, and then you fail over, and it's a push button, and you fail back. Because we've already set up those re-IPing, boot order, and things like that ahead of time, and then Zerto will do the rest. So here we have a simple overview of our architecture, and I say simple because here we have 2 sites, and Zerto can support multiple sites. So there are 2 components of the software, the Zerto Virtual Manager, and that's a plug-in to vCenter Server. And then we have the Zerto Virtual Replication Appliance. And you'll see there's 1 per ESX host. That's what actually takes care of the replication of the data. The Zerto Virtual Manager is the only piece of software that you'll touch, as you saw kind of in the animation. It actually pushes out the virtual replication appliances and will take care of the maintenance and management of those. I also want to be very clear that these are appliances. They're not agents that require constant care and feeding and upgrading and patching and maintenance. The virtual replication appliance is managed by the virtual manager. So you can replicate from anything to anything. So if you have EMC to NetApp, or if you want to try out a new storage array like Pure or Nimble, you can drop that in production and move your older hardware over to the target site. So this helps you reduce costs and lets you try out new hardware. So highly scalable. So as you can see, you just add a virtual replication appliance to each ESX host. When you add another ESX host, you just install the virtual replication appliance. So it's continuous block level replication. That's what delivers the very, very aggressive service levels that Sam mentioned. Oops, sorry about that. And there's a journal for point-in-time recovery from logical failures. So the journal is kind of like a TiVo for your environment. It's 1 hour up to 5 days worth of data and very, very granular. And you heard Sam talk a little bit about that. So you'll get to failover, within a minute. You'll have maybe 15 to 20 data points that you could select to fail over to because we're replicating all the time. And then we do some optimization for networking, some compression, throttling, things like that. Okay, the virtual protection group, this is how we enable application protection. So what you can do is select a particular application, whatever it is, SharePoint, SQL, Exchange, and you identify the virtual machines that are part of that application and you put them together in a group. That's going to be your virtual protection group. Within that virtual protection group, this is what's going to enable consistency across the VMs so you can ensure right order fidelity to make sure that you can, in fact, recover. This also supports vMotion, storage vMotion, HA. So some of those features that you unfortunately have to disable with other replication solutions because it doesn't have the awareness of the virtual environment. It only sees, for example, the LUN. So once you move a VM from within the environment and it's on a different LUN, now the replication technology gets confused and now you're exposed. With the virtual protection groups within Zerto Virtual Replication, we're aware of those changes and you can fully take advantage of all the features of virtualization. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the replication of the data, grouping the VMs, and configuring everything carefully. And that's really half of the story in terms of Zerto Virtual Replication. The other half is the automation, the automated failover, failback, recovery, one-click to test, because this is what really makes your life easier. So you saw the information gets replicated over to the target site, and then you have a failover. So when you failover, Zerto will automatically build the virtual machines at the secondary site. We don't have shadow VMs there as placeholders, so we build those. And when you're setting up the virtual protection group, you've set things up like boot order, re-IPing, any other reconfiguration that needs to happen within the virtual protection group. And that's how we get that very aggressive RTO of minutes, because you've set up all of these steps that are required for failover ahead of time, and now Zerto just executes them. Click to test anytime. So within the VPG, you'll set up a test network, so a bubble network within your environment, and you can just fail over to that test environment, see that, yes, the failover is going to work, it's going to perform as expected, or you can see if you need to make any adjustments to your configuration to make sure that when it does fail over, it's as you need it. This testing can be done at any time because it's separate from your production environment. It's non-disruptive. While you're doing your test, replication is still occurring, so the data is still getting over there to the target site. And if by chance, within your in the middle of your DR test, something happens, you need to do a real failover, you can stop your disaster recovery test and do your production failover. And then we have an offsite cloning feature. So for example, you have that information on your target site already. Why not make it useful? Create a clone. You can use that for test and dev. So now you have the latest production copy of your environment to do development, or use that for backups. Instead of putting more infrastructure, more overhead on your business critical applications, make more use of your secondary data center. Simple management from everywhere, anywhere. So you can see that on the left-hand side, there's a plugin to vSphere, so we keep it simple and centralized, so you continue to go to that one location. And we also have a browser-based interface. One of our customers uses the browser-based interface to keep his boss out of vCenter. So he needed, the director of his team needed to get access to the reports, but he didn't want him going in vCenter and changing, addresses or VM names or anything like that. And he was worried he might do that. So he was able to just give him a link, send him to the browser-based interface, and then he didn't need to get into vCenter itself. He could just get into Zerto. So as I mentioned, we support multi-sites. Oops, I'm sorry, my computer just froze. We are just having a tough time with this webinar today. Here we go. Let's try this again. So they all popped up at once. That's okay. So you can see we have multiple sites. So you can replicate internationally. We have no latency requirements. We can support replication from several sites to one shared infrastructure to deliver multi-tenancy. The product is natively multi-tenant. And also we can do bidirectional replication. So some of our customers don't have a dedicated production site and then a dedicated DR site. They have two kind of warm sites. So one is mostly used for DR, but they still have some production there. We enable replication bidirectionally, so you're able to continue with that business practice. And then we also have support for a single vCenter. So if you have a local office that's maybe 15 or 40 miles from a large data center, you might not have a separate vCenter instance for that really small infrastructure. So it appears to be within the same vCenter, although from a physical perspective they are separated. With Zerto, we are able to support replication from that local office that's just a little bit away from your centralized data center and replicate that back into your production environment. And then, of course, we support replications to cloud providers as well. We have very good reporting. The audit reports detail each step within the failover process and shows that it was successful and then the time it takes. This enables you to know exactly how long it's going to take to fail over a particular application. So you can run this test and you'll see, this took 8 minutes, 33 seconds. That's how long it's going to take when you do the failover in production. And we also have some resource planning and performance chart information so you can see what the consumption is of a VM on the target site and the production site. So it gives you a really comprehensive picture of the resources that that VM is consuming. Okay, so we've talked a lot about BCDR in the private cloud, so when you have both sites like Sam. So, and you're able to do replication between those two sites. But we also do work with cloud service providers. If you wanted to evaluate the cloud, disaster recovery as a service is a great way to do that because you still own and manage the production environment and let them just manage the disaster recovery site. It's a good way to evaluate them. As you become more comfortable with them, then you can maybe give them those cranky applications, let them handle the whole thing for you, let them do production and DR for those applications. And you can see we work with some of the big names. We have many, many others that we're working with as well. I couldn't fit all 150 logos on the slide. Okay, so we've talked about a virtualware solution built for business critical applications, delivering protection, recovery, configuration at the application level, scalable and really simple. You heard Sam talk about how easy it was. So whether you're going to implement a private cloud, go to the public cloud, or if you're using a hybrid cloud, Zerto can certainly help you reach those objectives. And then, so for questions, so if you want to email Sam, there's his email address if you have any questions about his environment in particular. My name is Jennifer Gill. I'm the Director of Product Marketing. Certainly feel free to email me as well. And then lastly, I'm just going to quickly introduce Shannon Snowden. He's our Senior Technical Marketing Architect. So if you ask any really hard questions that I can't answer or Sam can't answer, then Shannon will be answering those. And certainly feel free to contact us over email. So I do need to just exit slideshow mode so I can get to the questions, but I will leave this up in the background so you can take a peek. Okay, we do have a couple of questions. Okay. So Sam, I think this person is asking about your environment and the replication. So it says, it sounds like you're saying the downtime is seconds. Doesn't it take time to power off a VM, perform a final sync of data, then power back up in the recovery site? If not, how is this process sped up? So can you talk a little bit about your experience there, Sam?
Yes, that really kind of depends on the type of failover you're doing. I mean, is your stack down completely, or are you just doing a failover? I mean, if your stack is down, then it just takes the amount of time it takes to power up a VM to bring it back up. And that's going to depend on several things. How fast is your stack? How fast does your server stack bring up a VM normally? So I mean that kind of pulls a little play into it too. I mean, we have, fairly robust stacks, and they do pretty well with bringing our VMs up pretty quick. But the older your technology may be, it may take more time to bring it up, and that's kind of something I can't really give you a good hard number on, because it really depends on what you're using. What we use, it's not the best in the world, but it's definitely not the worst. And like I said, from our experience, we have, like I said, 8 critical boxes, and those are in our first 3 virtual protection groups, and it takes 8 minutes to bring all those up from just a dead stack. I mean, when our main production one went down, it was completely off, and when we failed it over, and well, not really fell over, just bringing it back up, because the replication stack you can still bring up. All it took was the amount of time it takes for the server to bring up a normal VM. Now, when you do an actual failover from stack to stack, then what it does is it starts bringing up the other VM on your replication stack, and the other one, is still up. There's different options you can do when you're failing over. You can shut down the VM from the start, so it shuts it down immediately, or you can kind of leave it up so it kind of stays up until the other one comes up, and then it kind of seamlessly transfers over to the new one. And that's what we prefer. We like to have them both up, and then we shut, one of them shuts down, the other one's still up, and then you don't even notice that anything really went down. And we use a bunch of network monitoring tools, application monitoring tools, and sometimes Zerto even tricks them, and they don't even notice that they went down. That's how good it is.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
Maybe answer that.
Yeah, no, I think you did really well. And here's a question that Shannon and I get a lot, and I can answer it, and Shannon, if you want to chime in. So does this completely replace SRM? So the short answer is yes. A little bit longer answer. So SRM really does just the orchestration piece, which Zerto does, but then you also need something to do the replication. So you might use vCenter replication from VMware or array-based replication. With Zerto, you don't need that additional product. Everything is in one solution for you.
If
So
I'm
Shannon, I
not
don't know if you have anything
mistaken,
to add. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think SRM is not storage agnostic. I think you have to have somewhat similar storage, if I'm not mistaken. In Zerto, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, so if you use the array-based replication to get the aggressive service level, Sam, that you're looking at, you're right. You do need to have matching storage arrays, so it won't be storage agnostic in that case. But the vCenter replication product is storage agnostic, but you won't get the RPOs that they advertise there at 15 minutes at best. So it depends on where you want to make your trade-off. Shannon,
I'd like to add in a
anything
little point on the talking about the. Yeah, I'd like to add in a point about the failover, the time it takes. Keep in mind that the RPO is in the seconds. In Sam's case, I think it was 3 seconds. So there's not this long data sync that you're used to with snapshot-based replication. There's nothing at the source side at all, as you saw in Jen's slides. It's all in the journal, and the data is already at the target location. So that's the reason why it's so fast to fail these over, because there's none of the time of the data sync in part of the failover process.
Great, thanks, Shannon. So Sam, another question for you. So this person would like you to shed more light on why you chose a 50 megabit WAN link, and also what's the speed of the drives on his storage infrastructure.
The speed of our drives is they're all 15K drives. So they're no slouches. We don't run any tiered SSDs, though. They're all just regular plattered 15Ks. And why we chose the 50 megabit WAN, that's an E-line through TW Telecom. That's just what they, it's just a good price point, and, we don't normally take up, our 2 stacks in Greenville right now, they're sitting right next to each other, and they're connected through gigabit switches. So, they're pretty smoking right there. But you know, when we had our old building and our new building connected to the WAN, that was only 10 MIF WAN, and we had no issues failing anything over or replicating data. We didn't really see any issues. We ended up dialing it up to 25 when we failed it over to production, and that's only because we were replicating and running all our production stuff off of the new building, and everybody was still working in the old building. And, you know, there was a little bit of, you know, maybe a little bit of slowdown on certain things at 25. So, you know, we dialed it up to 50, although nobody's really going to be working off that 50, you know, megabit WAN. It's just basically for replication. And if the Greenville circuit goes down, then we can fail everything over through that E-line to Texas. And then Texas has a separate circuit going out, and then we just send everything out there, and nobody knows any difference, and our techs keep running the calls per normal.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. So that is actually all the questions that we have at the moment. I'll give everyone another minute in case they want to sneak in a last-minute question. So a couple of things I'd just like to mention is, one, we'd love to do proof of concepts. If you're interested in trying out Zerto, it can be installed in your environment in less than an hour, and we'd love to have you try it. And we provide proof of concepts at no charge, so you can use the software for 2 weeks in your environment and see what you think. And no other questions came in. So again, if you think of anything else, certainly feel free to reach out to Sam, Shannon, or myself. We'd love to hear from you. We really appreciate you all taking the time to spend with us today and learn about Zerto Virtual Replication. And lastly, I also appreciate your patience, because I know that this webinar got off to a bit of a slow start. So thank you so much for your time. Oh,
there's one more
yes,
question.
Right,
I was just going to tell this guy to send me an email, his email address, and I'll email him that stuff.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So for the last question around Microsoft products, we'll put you in touch with Sam directly, and he'll answer those questions for you. Okay, great. Everyone, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your patience at the front end. Have a great day.